At 82, this is my biggest regret about moving into a nursing home. At 82 years old, I've had a long life to think about the choices I've made. Some of them were good decisions, some were mistakes, but there is one decision that I think about more often than the others: moving into a nursing home. At the time, it seemed reasonable, sensible, even. My family encouraged it. They were worried about my safety. They told me I would have support, comfort, and people around me at all times. You won't have to struggle with things alone anymore, they said, and I believed them. I thought it might make life easier. But what I didn't understand then was how much of my life I would be leaving behind when I walked through those doors. If you or someone you love is considering this step, I'm not here to tell you what decision to make. Every situation is different, but I do want to share 6 things I wish someone had told me before I moved in. Because life inside a nursing home isn't only about care and convenience. It changes your relationship with freedom, with time, and even with yourself. And once that change happens, it can be harder to reverse than most people realize. So if this is a decision you're thinking about, stay with me for a moment. These reflections might help you see the situation in a different light. The first thing I didn't expect was how quickly I would lose my independence. Before moving into the nursing home, my life wasn't perfect, but it was still mine. I woke up when I wanted to wake up. Some mornings I got out of bed early and made coffee while the sun came through the kitchen window. Other mornings, I stayed under the blankets a little longer. I chose when to eat. I decided how to spend my day. Sometimes I took a walk around the neighborhood. Sometimes I sat in my favorite chair with a book and simply enjoyed the quiet. They were small freedoms, ordinary things, but they made my life feel like my own. Inside the nursing home, I slowly realized those small freedoms had disappeared. Everything followed a schedule. Breakfast happened at a certain hour, whether you were hungry or not. Lights dimmed at night, whether you felt tired or wide awake. Even something as simple as going outside for fresh air sometimes required asking permission and waiting for someone to be available. At first, I told myself this was normal. After all, the staff had many residents to care for. But over time, something subtle began to change inside me. When you stop making your own decisions, even small ones, you begin to feel less like the author of your life and more like a participant in someone else's routine. You adapt because you have to. But each day, a small piece of independence quietly slips away. Another thing I didn't expect was how easy it is to feel forgotten. When I first moved in, my family visited often. My daughter came by every week. My grandchildren stopped in on weekends when they could. Those visits meant everything to me. But life outside keeps moving. Children grow busy with work, school, responsibilities. Schedules fill up. Plans change. Visits that once happened every week slowly become once a month, then sometimes longer. It doesn't mean the people you love have stopped caring about you. It simply means their lives continue moving forward while yours begins to revolve around a single place. I remember sitting in the common room one afternoon watching the front door. Several of us were sitting there. No one said it out loud, but we were all waiting for the same thing. Footsteps, a familiar face, a reminder that we still mattered in the world outside those walls. Sometimes someone's family arrived and you could see their eyes light up. Other times the door opened and closed without anyone coming for you. That quiet feeling, the sense that life is continuing somewhere else, can be heavier than people expect. Another change I didn't fully understand before moving in was the loss of purpose. When you live in your own home, even small responsibilities give structure to your day. You water the plants, you tidy the kitchen, you prepare meals, you run errands. These things might feel like chores when you're younger, but later in life they become something else. They give your day meaning. In the nursing home, most of those responsibilities disappear. Meals arrive without effort. Rooms are cleaned by staff. Someone else takes care of the little details of daily life. At first, that sounds comforting, but after a while, the days begin to stretch. Morning becomes afternoon. Afternoon becomes evening. And sometimes you realize you've spent the entire day waiting for something to happen rather than creating something yourself. I once met a man there named George. He had been a carpenter his whole life. His hands were strong, steady, skilled. He used to build furniture in his garage back home. Tables, cabinets, small wooden toys for his grandchildren. But in the nursing home, there were no tools, no workshop, no projects waiting for him. One afternoon, he looked down at his hands resting quietly in his lap. "I don't know what to do with them anymore," he said. It wasn't just boredom he was feeling. It was the loss of purpose. And when purpose fades, something inside us begins to slow down. Another reality I didn't anticipate was how quickly physical strength can change. Before moving in, I stayed active without thinking much about it. I walked to the store. I cleaned the house. I cooked meals. Movement was simply part of daily life. Inside the nursing home, everything was designed to make things easier. Meals were delivered. If you needed help, you pressed a button. You didn't have to walk very far for anything. At first, it felt like a relief, but slowly I noticed something happening. The less I moved, the weaker my body became. Standing up from a chair required more effort. Walking longer distances felt harder. Muscles that had stayed strong for years began to fade faster than I expected. I saw the same pattern in others. People who arrived walking on their own 2 feet gradually began relying on walkers, then wheelchairs, not because they wanted to, but because their bodies had adapted to doing less. Movement is easy to underestimate, but in later years, it becomes one of the most important medicines we have. Another difficult adjustment was the loss of privacy. At home, privacy is something we rarely think about. You close a door. You enjoy a quiet moment alone. You move through your day without feeling watched. In a nursing home, that sense of personal space changes. Staff members come and go throughout the day. Rooms are checked regularly. Assistance is needed for tasks that once felt private. Even when the caregivers are kind and respectful, it takes time to accept that your daily life is no longer completely your own. For many people, that loss of dignity is harder than they expected. Finally, there is something few people talk about before moving into a nursing home: how difficult it can be to leave. When I first arrived, I told myself the move was temporary. If I didn't like it, I could always go back home. But life outside had already begun to shift. My house sat empty. Maintaining it became complicated. My family started discussing selling it. And after several months inside the facility, I noticed something else. I wasn't as confident in my independence as I once had been. When your routines change and your strength declines even slightly, the idea of returning to a completely independent life can begin to feel intimidating. Not impossible, but more difficult than you imagined. Many residents shared similar stories. They arrived thinking it was a short-term solution. But over time, the nursing home slowly became their entire world. Looking back now, I don't regret getting older. Aging is simply part of life. But I do regret believing that moving into a nursing home was my only option. Some people truly need the level of care those places provide, and for them it may be the right choice. But if you are still healthy enough to maintain some independence, it may be worth exploring other possibilities first. Home care, community support, family arrangements that allow you to stay connected to your own space. Because the routines you have today, the freedom to decide how your day unfolds, the quiet dignity of living life on your own terms, these things are more valuable than many people realize. And once they are gone, you understand just how meaningful they were. If this reflection has given you something to think about, I'd love to hear from you. What part of independence matters most to you as you grow older? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoy conversations about life, aging, and the wisdom that comes with experience, consider subscribing to this channel. Because growing older doesn't mean life becomes smaller. Sometimes it simply means we begin to see what truly matters.